Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Holly Stanfield, Bradford theater teacher. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tell me, how did you come to the Kenosha Unified School District?
I had taught in Janesville for 8 years, and then I left that job to become a professional actor in Chicago. And then I had my baby, Amy, and after she had developed about 4 years, I decided that I needed to head back into the teaching field again. So I called Ralph Houghton, and Ralph referred me to Linda Uding at the KUSD ESC.
How did you know Ralph Houghton?
He is a relative of Rennick Ross, who I used to do jazz singing with.
Okay. And after you met with Linda Uding, what transpired?
Linda offered me a job in a temporary position as an elementary music teacher, which is not where I held my certification. I held certification at high school level, but they can give you a temporary license to do that. And I said yes, and then about a day before new teachers came back for the year, Larry Simons from the music department called me and said that there was an opening at Ruther Central High School for a music teacher, and would I be interested? And I said absolutely. So I interviewed with Larry and Shelley Henning, who at that point was the principal of that building, and took the position as the music person at Ruther Central High School.
Okay. And then how did you get involved in the theater aspect?
Well, as I walked out of my interview with Ms. Henning, she said, I see that you do theater. Are you going to do a play with the kids? And I said, sure. So we began to do plays, well, actually musicals, at Ruther Central High School.
And what year was this?
That would be 1986. No, I lied. 1990.
1990.
Yeah.
What was the first production that you did?
The first production I did with Ruther was Godspell. And I did it with an all-female cast, and it was a wonderful experience for the kids. Mr. Simons came and saw the production and then invited me to begin a summer musical theater program for the entire district.
And was this your first production? I mean, not just at Ruther, but I mean in your career?
No, I also directed musical theater for my junior high school students in Janesville.
Okay. So, and how did you feel about that first production?
I thought it was wonderful. The kids loved it, the community loved it, there was great energy, they worked really hard. It was a success. We took a portion of that to Choral Fest that year, and that was a success, so it was a wonderful moment.
And the next step after Mr. Simon said, great, I love it, what happened after that?
After that, we did a production of Annie and opened it to the entire community. We had a great response, and we did our first production at Ruther Central High School's auditorium, and it went extremely well.
And what did that lead to? More productions at Ruther every year? How many did you do?
So that led to, I believe our next production at Ruther was Little Shop of Horrors. And at that point, a lot of the kids that had been involved with the high school kids that had been involved with the summer program decided that they would like to come over and join us at Ruther, since there was no other musical theater offering on the high school level at that point. So kids from across the district could come to Ruther for any reason to work, and they began coming to Ruther to do musical theater during the school year as well.
And was this after school that they came to do
Yes, it was an extracurricular production.
Okay, and how did that develop? I mean, did you have a name for this program? Did you?
At that point, it was just the Ruther Central High School theater program, but as the years progressed, the program was eventually named by our marketing teacher the Kenosha Youth Performing Arts Company. And that's where that began. And the program kept growing during the year and during the summer, and more kids were becoming involved. And eventually the parents came with a plate of cookies and said, can we help? And And they began to get involved, so the program began to grow.
And how long did you spend at Ruther?
I was at Ruther for 6 years.
And what happened after that?
At that point, the school board was considering reducing the number of elective classes that the kids at Ruther would have to take for graduation and focusing more on their academic work. So I didn't think that would bode very well for my position in the school, so I applied for a music job at Shorewood High School in Shorewood, Wisconsin, which was my alma mater. It was a part-time job, and I received the contract and then turned in my resignation to Larry Simons for the next school year because I would be moving to Shorewood High School.
And did you move to Shorewood?
Well, I got a phone call several days later from Joe Mangi at Bradford High School that said, wait a minute, what's going on? And I explained, and Joe said, no, we'll just find a position for you here at Bradford. So that's when I moved to Bradford and became the television, communications, and theater and choir teacher alongside Brad Mann, who was the full-time choir teacher.
Was this job created for you?
Yes, I believe that Mr. Manchi created the job so that they wouldn't lose me to Shorewood High School.
And then what happened at Bradford?
So eventually the television program kind of grew away from the program, and the theater program really expanded. And I continued to teach choir for a while, and eventually the theater program expanded to the point that I was not teaching choir, I was teaching theater and musical theater.
Okay. And how did that program expand? How did it go for Bradford or beyond?
So when I moved from Ruther to Bradford, everybody still wanted to work together. So after school, we used the Kenosha Youth Performing Arts Company after school, and then eventually kids opted, some of them, to come to Ruther to be a part of to come to Bradford to be a part of the Bradford program.
Okay. And what did it actually become? What was it shaped as a district program?
So we eventually went to the school board for funding and expanded the program. We got a great budget. We expanded the course offerings at Bradford High School. We got Schedule D, which is like coaching positions associated with the program. And at that point, with that kind of funding and that kind of support, the program really did take off. When Indian Trail High School and Academy became Indian Trail High School and Academy, they used a lot of our coursework, and it went across the district to Indian Trail, and some of the coursework was also adapted at Tremper High School.
Okay, and is this different from the way most high schools do their theater programs?
Yes, it is. It became, because it was at Ruther originally and anybody from the district could come there to work, and that model moved to Bradford, we still audition kids from across the district to work together in plays and musicals, and that has continued. Where in most high schools you would have Tremper doing their own productions and Bradford doing their own productions, and Indian Trail High School and Academy doing their own productions, Harborside Academy doing their own productions. Now kids audition once a year for Bradford, Indian Trail, and Harborside, and we place them in up to 16 different productions. They also can audition for every Tremper show. They just do that at Tremper prior to each production. So the shows are open to all students in Kenosha instead of just their home school.
Okay, and coursework has changed for these schools as well to accommodate the students while they're not in a production after school?
Once the program was initially passed by the school board, the offerings increased. Prior to that, I believe there was probably a drama class that was available at both high schools, which at that point were Bradford and Tremper. Now you have stagecraft, you have drama continues, you have acting classes. At Bradford we have dance classes. That's the only building still that offers that. I have a class at Bradford called Vocal Tech for Musical Theater, and that is only at Bradford, and that continues to be offered. And then there's stage management after school, and theater practicum, which is actually the productions. So yes, it expanded greatly.
So Were the productions pretty much established before the auditions would be held in fall? Did you know what productions you were planning on doing?
No, we audition the students first. So we'll see the kids in the spring, late spring, May, early June, and we'll look at who is interested in participating. Usually that's between 150 and 200 students. And then we will fit the season to their talents. So we look at the kids first because this is educational theater, and we find things that will help them grow.
Okay. And was it difficult building this extensive theater program? You said you got district funding, but I mean, did they just sign on and say, we never had theater like this before, let's go? Or did they kind of say, why are we doing this? How did they approach that?
Initially, I think there was a question as to why we were doing it, but we clarified that it was really kind of coming up from the community and what the kids wanted and their families wanted. And after that was clarified, I've had nothing but great support from the Kenosha Unified School District. It's been awesome.
How about initial funding? Was that a challenge?
We put it together and we had an initial meeting, and again, I think at that point it was challenged a little bit, but quite honestly, only for a moment, and they really went with it and supported it. So no, not a whole lot of, this is a wonderful community to work in. People understand the arts, and I do believe Ralph Houghton had established such a wonderful music program and arts program here that adding the theater piece just seemed logical to the community, and they have been nothing but supportive. It's been great.
Did the city have any role in helping get the program launched?
You know, I met with the mayor because we were fundraising for a trip to Europe at one point, and I know that he asked if we had funding at that point, and I said no. At that point, we did not have a lot of district funding, and he said, "Well, sometimes in a community, businesses look at that as the district won't value it." So I think that gave us the impetus to really reach out to the school board and get funding. And you know, I don't know if the mayor had anything to do with that or not, but to tell you the truth, really, once we took that step, KUSD was right on board and did a great job.
And today with funding, I mean, you have taken productions to the International Thespian Festival in Nebraska.
Yep.
How is that funded?
For years, well, when Joe Mangy was in charge, it was kind of by hook or by crook, and Joe would just go and ask everybody around for money, and we made it happen. Plus, the kids do a lot of fundraising, and the families did a lot of fundraising, and our department did a lot of fundraising, and we still do all those things. But under Dr. Sue Savaglio Jarvis, she reached out and said, you know, we shouldn't be doing this so helter-skelter. Why don't we just make a fund, since this is sort of like going to the state football tournament. We just are very successful at it, so we do it a lot. She said we should have a fund so that if you need money, the money is there. And if we don't go, then the money goes back into the general budget. But yes, that fund was created for us to take kids to the largest festival for theater in the United States that draws from all 50 states.
And you mentioned community and theater. Mm-hmm. What is the role of the community? What is the role of theater in the community? How do you look at that?
Well, theater essentially is an art form that is associated with democracy. They were born at the same moment in Greece. So the idea of democracy was born in Greece, and the idea of theater as we see it in a Western sense was also born in Greece. And that's when you have one character speaking to another character on the stage, and they have two different points of view, and basically theater is their argument, and democracy says that out of that argument we come up with truth. So similarly, when you're watching a story on stage, you're hearing two different points of view, and that helps the audience exercise empathy for other points of view. It helps the audience understand stories that are really important to their culture. So that is what theater brings to a community, and it has brought a lot to the Kenosha community. And the Kenosha community has brought a lot to our program. So it's something that works both ways.
So you mentioned Kenosha being a wonderful place to do theater.
It is.
Why do you say that?
Because Kenosha is such a microcosm of the United States. I mean, it's such a vibrant, diverse community. And to be able to tell the stories that are important to Kenosha is a way for us to really talk about America, who we are and what we really believe in, and all of the wonderful freedoms and liberties that we enjoy.
Can you tell me some of the diversity in the productions that you've done that kind of point to this?
Yeah. I would say probably the most challenging production that we did with our diversity was a story called The Scottsboro Boys. And it was written about a major trial in the United States, and it was an entirely black cast with the exception of one character, the interlocutor. And it basically talked about slavery, it talked about Jim Crow, it talked about all things that were important to black history in the United States. And it spoke about it very strongly. And the community really responded. Our actors really responded. We took it to the International Festival. One of the creators came, Susan Stroman, who was the director choreographer on Broadway. And she sat after the production and talked to an international audience about our production and its importance in the history of the United States and its importance in storytelling. And we've done several productions that are really on that level and really important to tell the stories of our very diverse culture in Kenosha.
How is it in producing plays, musicals, on the various stages in the district? Are they all the same in terms of how the stage is laid out, or are there differences?
There are differences. So each stage space actually in Kenosha is different. Tremper has a wonderful stage space that has just recently been beautifully renovated, but they do not have the ability to raise and lower scenery. They don't have a fly space. They have very adequate side stage space, and the house is newly renovated and wonderful, so it's a great place to do theater and concerts. Indian Trail High School and Academy also has a wonderful space. They do have the full ability to raise scenery up and down and have very wide side stage space. They have a very long house, as does Tremper. So again, a good place to do theater. I work at Bradford, and I love the Bradford space because it's not laid out in such a long fashion audience-wise. It's a little more European in its construction, so it's a bit wider, so the audience is closer to the stage. We can raise and lower theater, scenery. We can also move things on and off the stage fairly fluently. We have a wonderful sound system, as does Indian Trail. I like doing theater at Bradford, I guess, because the audience is a bit closer than the other spaces in town.
When did you start taking productions to the International Festival?
In the late 90s is when we began that. The first thing that we took there was Godspell, which we also main staged at the State Festival. So we did a lot of productions of Godspell that year. I think we did it 4 or 5 times. It was great. So that was our first experience on the main stage at the International Festival.
So this is almost the year that you first started at Bradford.
I would say it was very close after that, yes. I don't have an exact date to tell you the truth in my brain anymore. But.
And has Kenosha Unified sent productions to this festival every year since?
Almost every year since. Yeah, it's quite, I think we probably brought 18 or 19 productions now to the main stage at the International Festival. Yes.
And given the fact that the program is a district-wide program, does that allow more latitude for productions here at the festival?
It does. When we travel to the festival, we definitely are representing a troupe. So a thespian troupe goes to the thespian festival. We have a thespian troupe at Bradford, we have a thespian troupe at Indian Trail High School, and we have a thespian troupe at Tremper. So there have been times that we have had 2 schools in the district go to the festival at the same time, representing 2 different schools with kids from across the district, which means that instead of 40 kids having an experience, there have been 80 kids having an experience in that situation.
And what do the students come away with by being at the festival, or what does the district come away with by being at this festival?
The students get to meet people that tell stories from across the entire country. And when you're doing that, you're not just talking to people from your community, you're talking to everybody in the country basically being represented. It allows them to share their stories. It allows them to hear stories that other students are bringing. It allows them to interface with probably over 50, 60 colleges and numerous professionals from across the country in theater. It allows them to meet other students that are passionate about the same things that they are and sit on campus and have a cup of coffee and discuss what's going on in their communities. It's all about connection, and they make a lot of connections.
And have students who have gone through the theater program here, have they gone on to become professional in theater?
Yes, we have many kids that are working professionally. As a matter of fact, Kayla Wilcoxon was just on the Late Late Show with James Corden a couple of days ago. And she is in the touring production of the Broadway musical 6. So yes, we have had numerous kids on Broadway. We have had numerous kids in touring shows. We have kids that work on boats. We have kids that work at Disney. We have kids that teach theater. We have kids that write theater. We have kids that produce movies. We have kids that produce albums. Lots of students out there making art and telling stories.
Have you ever had a reunion?
We have not had a formal reunion, but when they're in town, people will stop by. One of my favorite moments was we were in our black box theater. We have a small black box theater where we do things, and I was just standing in the entryway kind of waiting for kids to continue their scene work, and one of my oldest students walked in and said, "I'm getting my doctorate." I said, "That's great. It's so nice to see you." "Okay, great, that's cool. Thank you, Calvin." And he ran right back out. But yeah, people do stop in and see productions and come and talk to us and share just how important this moment in their lives were.
And how has the community responded over time?
The community has come right along with us. We have done some very mature work for high school in Kenosha, and with the support of our administration. And to tell you the truth, the community has come right along in the ride, hearing the stories and supporting our students and what they're saying.
Have there been challenges with some of the mature performances that you have put on?
Not very much. Occasionally, someone will call and mention something that is troubling them, but in general, they just want us to know what that is, and we listen to them and take that into consideration. But in general, no, there has not been very much discussion that has been negative. I would say we're in the 98% positive zone.
Okay, and you mentioned that these productions, regardless of what school they're at, have students from across those 4 schools you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
The community is aware that if I go to a Tremper play, these are not just all Tremper kids. These are not all Indian Trail kids if I go to a production there.
Yes. Usually in the program, a kid will have a bio, and in the bio it will say, "I'm a student at this school, and I'm in this grade, and this is my experience."
Does the program kind of summarize the district theater program? Every time you have a production like the Kenosha Unified School District Theater Program is set up this way, involves all these different things, or does people just understand it?
I think it's just understood, yeah. It's a community within a community. So you're going to find that a lot of parents that would have never met each other now know people from Tremper and Indian Trail High School and Bradford, and everybody's kind of one big family, which is the beauty of it. It creates community. Theater does create community.
You don't do this alone. Who
Oh,
else?
no.
who has been with you along the way, for a long time along the way, more recently joined on? Who are the people who you depend on?
it's impossible to do this alone. It's one of the largest forms of art out there, live art. I mean, I suppose a giant concert could be a similar kind of a thing, but you're going to need a person to do all of your technical work. You need to get people to help you with costuming. You need to have people help you with publicity. You need to have people run your lobby. You need to do all of those things. You need people to play in your orchestra. You need all sorts of people. So over the years, I've had great help. The longest standing person in the program that has been with me is Jody Williams, who is our technical director at Bradford High School. There have been other people. Christy Geidner is currently also a theater director at Bradford and does wonderful work. Rob Vanderloop was there at one point. Herschel Kruger, who is now in charge of theater at Carthage College, was at one point our technical director. Roger Stasic was kind of the first guy that was there, and he was in the AV department, but also worked on the stage with me. So there have been multitudes of, and I know that I'm missing names, but multitudes of people that have worked, and many, many parents that have also supported our efforts.
Okay, so as you mentioned, all these people who have helped in various phases of putting a production together, they are not there doing these things when the production is going on. Who is doing all the work?
The kids are doing all of the work. That's the beauty of what we do. Once we have directed the kids through a production, worked with the kids to make a production, then the production is basically handed over to them and we stand back and take notes. The only position at Bradford that we don't hand off to a student is our sound designer, Eric Milke, who has also been with us forever and is amazing. He is the only one, but he will have a student at his side as his assistant who's also running sound effects and doing things like that.
Okay, so with all of the facets involved in a production such as live theater, do you have anything to compare that to? The difficulty in bringing all this to fruition?
Well, I once said that when we took something to ITF, that's an insane day that would probably be a microcosm of all of this stuff coming together, because you start a production and you have acting rehearsals and the kids in the technical classes are putting together the stage, and the kids are helping with costuming, and we're getting all of that done, and we're putting out all the publicity and we're doing all of this stuff. But when it gets down to the moment where the show is happening, at ITF, that means we throw a full stage full of equipment and scenery and properties and costumes on a truck, a semi-truck. We take it to the big stage at ITF. We unload the truck in the morning, which is several hours worth of work. We put all of that stuff into the space, which means lighting, which means costume, which means sound, which means everything. We get the kids dressed. We do two full performances of the show. Then when we're done, we take everything out of the space, clean up the entire space, and put everything back in the truck. And that's we probably in one of those days start at 8 in the morning and we get done at around 2:30 in the morning the next day. And I jokingly said to someone, it's sort of like birthing a baby. If you're a woman, you know what that feels like, the kind of exhilaration and the exhaustion at the end of the day. It's similar energy-wise to that. It's a lot. But it's incredibly rewarding and you're incredibly filled with the experience.
So the kids obviously have a great advantage in terms of what they gain, in terms of the training, the acting, all of the set design, lighting, and sound. What else did they come away with in live theater, in the theater program?
Theater breaks down walls. You can watch it in a theater class, you can watch it in production. When you're on stage with someone, there has to be a certain amount of honesty, or it's disingenuous. And kids know when things are disingenuous. Any human being knows when something's disingenuous. So when you're acting, you have to take down some of those walls. With children's permission, because we would never challenge a child to do something they're uncomfortable with. At times you have to embrace. At times you have to get very close to someone to communicate the story. So when students go through rehearsals and go through productions like this, they grow. They become less fearful human beings. They come into relationship with people that maybe are not their best friends, but they're very comfortable with by the end of a production. They also learn time management. They also learn how to promote themselves. They learn about history. They learn about math. They learn about literature. It's an all-encompassing form. In other words, if you're going to tell a story, you have to know something about it. You have to do the research. That's not performing it. That's not the act of acting. But you have to have that in your background to understand the circumstances of the story, to understand what you're trying to communicate to your audience, what your audience should walk away with, what the super objectives are, all of that stuff. So it's a lot of learning.
Okay, so a lot of learning. You start at a base level of learning and you grow from this in some kind of form.
Yep.
How is that?
So let's just say that you want to be a mathematician, okay? So you go to grade school and you learn how to add and subtract, and you get to high school and you go to algebra and geometry and pre-calc and calculus. And math at the top of its form, you know, at the top of that little pyramid of learning where the basic is down here and the point is what your goal is, that would be creation. To create in math, you have to have a lot of knowledge underneath it. When you're working in the arts, theater, music, art, graphic arts, kids can access the top of that pyramid much earlier than they can in some other subjects. So they can become creative. They can become a part of that top part of the learning pyramid much sooner, which is really important.
COVID, the pandemic,
Yep.
has to have affected the theater program when a lot of live performances could not be done.
Yep.
How did that affect the theater program in the district?
It was tough because you come together to make theater, and that was a time when we could not come together. So the pandemic hit on, I believe it was March 13th. That was a Friday. And by Monday, schools were closed, and we never came back that year. And then the next year, when we came back, we were in a hybrid situation where some students chose to come to school live, and the rest of the students were at home.
Now, the second year is 2021.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it would have been the second school year. So the district did allow at that point for us to videotape production and for us to have 16 kids on the stage working together. So greatly reduced numbers as far as working together, masked, distanced. But we did at Bradford videotape 9 productions that year, which was a lot of work. We learned a lot of great things, but it was still really tough, I think, especially socially, on young people. Those years were really rough.
Was Bradford the only school to have productions that second year, that 2021?
Nope. Tremper also taped some productions. Indian Trail High School did tape some productions. So not quite as many as we did, but everybody, I believe, did at least 1 or 2 tapes that year so that kids could have an experience.
Okay. So then we have the 21-22 school year. What happened?
That's when we were emerging from the pandemic. So first semester we were still masked, but quite a few kids were back in school. So we did, our bid for the International Festival was Groundhog Day the musical, which we did with masks, and it's a very physical comedy, and that's hard to do with a mask on because the most physical part of your body is your face. But the kids did well enough to make it to the festival. It was just interesting to watch them when we put up the production again in the late spring to take it to festival in June without masks, just to watch the transformation of both them as actors backstage and on the stage, and just to watch how the energy changed in the show without the mask. So, yeah.
And 2022-23, where's the theater program this year?
I think we are as close as we have been to normal now. I think we've functioned this year pretty much fully. If students feel that they need to wear masks still, of course we allow that. but most are opting not to do that during performance. And most kids are not wearing a mask to school right now. So yeah, I think that things are, we're getting back on the normal cycle of activities in the district.
So are there any new challenges or new challenging performances in the near future?
Yes, I guess I can probably say that we will be working with, at Bradford next year, we are going to be working with a best-selling New York Times writer. So that's kind of a new and interesting thing for us. And the people that adapted one of her novels into a musical. So for Bradford, that's what we're looking forward to next year, and kind of taking that to festivals and engaging with someone that's in the literary world. So that's a brand new and wonderful adventure for us.
And is the student participation growing every year, or is it pretty much the same level of 140, 200 students involved?
It fell off during the pandemic quite a bit. A lot of the arts programs I know kind of lowered, but I'm seeing it rise again this year, so we're expecting that it's going to come back up to that level very soon.
And for you?
Yeah.
What's your future? You've been doing this for 30 years.
I've been doing this for a long time. I love this. Right now, I'm just looking forward to doing another year at Bradford High School as a part-time teacher. I am retired, but I work part-time just producing the shows after school. So looking forward to more of that.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.